For this lesson, we will learn the basic construct of an if statement to accomplish what we call conditional programming. This allows us to look at contingent scenarios based on a Boolean value that it might be true or false, which leads us to go either right or left depending on the result of that Boolean expression. Okay, so what I'm going to do before I write the code, which I have prepared here a file for it, is to graphically show the flow of a typical program that does not have a conditional statement in it, and then compare that to the flow of a program that actually has some sort of a condition that will divert the flow either to the right or the left, basically based on the fact that whatever you're comparing or whatever you're evaluating is either true or false. So to do this, I'm going to use my sketchbook here to draw something. And let's start with a flow chart of a sequential program, a typical sequential program. Okay, I will start here, and I'm going to use standard flowchart notations. So this would be my start terminal for the beginning of a program. This might be some sort of a declaration, right? So similar to what we've coded before. This here may be something like this: int A, int B, right? And then I might ask the user, and this will be an input a value for A, right? And notice I'm going to draw arrows that shows the flow. So these are flow lines as to what's next. I'm going to input B, right? And then what I'm going to do is, let's say I declared also another variable called int R for result. And I'm going to say R equals A plus B, right? Now this is a process. Okay. And then I am going to output R to a file, to a screen. It all depends what you're doing. But this is the basic logic, and this will be the end of the program. So notice when you're looking at a program like this, the flow is sequential. So this is what we call sequential or sequencing, right? Starts from the top, goes to the bottom in one line. Okay? Now, what if we had a program that gives us an alternate scenario? This is the only scenario you have. You're going to have to start at the beginning. You're going to have to declare variables. So you're going to have to declare some variables. You're going to have to do an assignment here. And here you're going to have to process. And here you will be outputting to the screen. So not any different than what we've seen so far in our coding up to this day. So now, again, as I said, I would like to have an alternate path. And that could be based on the fact maybe if R exceeds a certain value, you're going to do something. If it's below a certain value, you're going to do something else. Oh, well, let's do that. Let's create a scenario. Let's start again. That will give us alternate scenarios. And let's go ahead and declare the same variables: int A, int B, and int result. Right? So a bunch of integers. And then we're going to input a value for A. So similar to what we've done here, input a value for B, then we're going to process for R. And notice now this is a rectangle, so there are no angles here. These are typically used for input-outputs. Now here's the deal. Let's say if the total R is positive or equal to 0, now you're going to do something. If it's true, so there are two conditions. It's either going to be true or false. So now notice that I have a path this way or a path this way, all depending on the result of what this yields. If it's true, then you could print probably out, say you could print a string that says positive to the screen. Else, if it's false, you're going to print out to the screen negative. Now remember, this is a string, so I'm just going to put two quotes here to explain that's what I'm doing. Now, whatever you do, you're going to have to continue on and flow with your program. So your scenarios end right here. This is called a connector, by the way. Okay? And then you continue on. Now, it happens that the end of my program is right here. This is called a terminator. Okay? But you can only have one flow that you're going to go through, one scenario, based on the result if R was positive or negative. So we will start with that as our first code that is similar to what we just did here. We're going to make it where A and B can be entered by a user. And then the total gets tallied. And if the total is negative, obviously, this statement will be false, which means you're going to go over here because you are testing if R is positive or the result is positive, right? So you are testing, again, if R is greater or equal to 0. If it's positive, definitely you're going to print positive to the screen. If it's negative, obviously the statement here is false, so you will print negative. Either way, you're going to finish up right here or this way. No matter what, you will complete the same, you will exit the same way as if you exited here. Okay? So that will be our introduction to an if-then-else statement. So this is called an if-then-else statement. Now, in C++ and in C, you're going to have an if. You're going to have what we call the condition. This is how you would write the code. So the condition will be right here. What do you mean by the condition? This is where we evaluate, is R greater or equal to 0? If it's true, then the line right below it, if it's true, then this line here, now I could put a curly brace here and a curly brace here. This could be a whole bunch of lines. All of these are going to be called the true block. Now, if it has only a single line like here, print this. If it's positive, that's exactly what it will do. So this whole thing between these two curly braces is called the true block. Now, if you do not put curly braces, only the first line will be the true block, and the rest will be considered as part of the rest of the program. However, by putting curly braces, I can have multiple lines within the true block of code or actions to do. Else, notice the keyword else now. This is part of the syntax. So if you have an if, you have an else. Now, not all the times you will have an else. That will be for another lesson. At this stage, we're going to learn the if and else. So else also will have its own block of code, and this will be the false block. Okay? All right. So could it be a single line? Absolutely. And in that case, you don't need these curly braces. Should you keep it as a single line with the curly braces, it will still be correct. But if you need more than one line of code within the false block, you definitely need these curly braces. So these are going to be the requirements on how to code this. Now, how are you going to write this condition? Well, this condition in our case, we're evaluating is r greater than 0. So you're basically asking the question, is r greater or equal to 0? Now, notice my equal now is written right here instead of like I did here. This is how you write it, you know, if you're taking an algebra course or calculus or what have you. For programming, you're going to have to enter greater and then the equal right after it. And you're going to put parentheses for the condition. This here, it's either true or false. It's a Boolean expression. It's a Boolean. This yields a Boolean result. Because it might be either true or false, that means you will either execute what's in the true block or you will execute what's in the false block. In other words, the direction of your flow is going to go this way if the condition is true. If the condition is false, then the direction of the flow will be going to this way towards this side of the flow, as you can see it. So what are we going to do now? Well, let's code this exact example. So let me just reduce this here, bring my keyboard back down. If I can control my keyboard, there you go. There you have it. And we're going to do the same exact example, right? So we're going to need a declaration of some form. We're going to need some sort of an assignment. We're going to need some sort of processing. Now, for our condition, we're going to call that an evaluation based on the condition. Okay? And this will be the end of the program. We already have a block of code there. System, pause to hold the screen, and return 0. So we need three variables here, int, a, b, and r. Okay? So we have our 3 variables now. Oops. Got to write int. There you go. Now, how about assigning values? Well, we can make it where it's user-friendly, which means this program will ask for a value for b and ask for a value for a, and then we should be able to process r where r equal a plus b, just like we had on the flowchart. So something like this, cout, enter a, then b. We could do all of it in one shot. Okay? So we could do something like this, cin, okay, a and b. All right, so again, could I have written enter a, cin a, enter b, cin b? Yes, absolutely. Okay, but this here, I'm just shortening the process here and compacting it a little bit. So we want to do r equal to a plus b. Okay, now we will do our evaluation. So this is our if statement. If r is greater or equal to 0, remember that? Okay, then if it's true, now I could put curly braces, but if it's a single line of code, no need for curly braces. And I could do something like this. Now notice here I hit the tab key, so that way you can line it up and you know this is the true block. Would it matter if you didn't? It will still work, but it's a really, really, really good idea to tab right after an if statement, okay? Right after you write. So this will delineate, in a way, visually, that this is our true block. The result is positive. Now, being 0 also is positive, okay? Now, I can do something like this, and L. Oops. And then we'll do else. And this would be the false block, right? So just move C out just a little bit to line it up. And this would be the result is negative. Now let's see again how this works. So I'm going to go ahead and compile and run. I've already saved this as example 17. So compile and run. Okay, so as you can see, it's the first time we're running it. I'm going to change the properties on the screen here to make it a little bigger. There you go. All right, so we're going to enter a value for B, 1, and space for A is 1, and then for B is 6. So 1 plus 5 is going to be 6, right? So this is going to result is positive. Let's run this again. And this time I'm going to enter A will be 1, space, and B will be minus 5. So we know the result will be minus 4, right? And let's see, it will, if it skips, the result is positive, right? We're controlling the flow now. This is why we need these kinds of evaluation. Okay, and sure enough, it goes to the false block and executes that line. Okay, so I hope this was a good introduction to see how an if statement behaves. Why do we need an else? And as we move forward, we're going to see variations of this if statement. We're going to see if statements without else. Okay, we're going to see what if you had a question within a question, right? What we call nested if statements, either on the true side or on the false side. Okay, so things will get really, really interesting because now we're getting into a level within our programming where we're concerned with the flow. Which scenarios are we going to run based on the results that we're evaluating? And I hope these results, as you know, yield a Boolean value, which makes life easier when you're ready to write if statements, because if statements evaluate against Boolean values. Okay? It's either going to be true or false. Go this way, go that way. Fantastic. I will see you again.